The last message from the accountant wasn't a goodbye. It wasn't even a warning. It was a sentence that looked like a mistake, like he typed it too fast with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. If I disappear, don't look for me. Look for the receipt. That was it. No name, no location, no explanation. Just that line, sent at 1:13 a.m., and then nothing. No calls after, no red receipts, no online status, no movement on any of his cards. And by morning, people were already saying the same thing in different ways, like the city had rehearsed it overnight. He traveled. He resigned. He's sick. Leave it alone. The thing about powerful people isn't just that they have money. It's that they have a way of making the world agree on a story before anyone even asks what happened. The pastor's story was already built. He wasn't just a preacher. He was a brand, a kingdom. His face smiled from billboards like a politician. His voice played on radio segments, right between morning devotionals and business adverts. He wore designer suits that looked like blessing, not expense. He spoke in that gentle, confident rhythm that makes people feel safe, like nothing bad could possibly live near him. And if you ever stood close enough, you'd notice the other thing about him. He didn't move like a man who feared God. He moved like a man who owned something bigger than the church. The accountant's name was Daniel. Quiet type. No noise. No public photos. No interviews. The kind of person who looks like background until you realize the entire building is leaning on him. He handled the ministry's private books. Private meaning the records that never got announced from the pulpit. The donations that didn't go into the public accounts. The accounts that were for special projects. The transfers labeled missions that never reached any mission field. Daniel was the man who understood how miracles were funded. And Daniel was the man who vanished. The day after his last message, the church issued a statement. Not emotional, not worried, not confused, just polished. They said Daniel had stepped away to focus on his health and asked members to respect privacy. They prayed. They smiled. They moved on. But behind that smile was panic, quiet panic, because the pastor didn't like loose ends. And Daniel was the loosest end of all. I didn't know Daniel personally. Not like a friend. More like a shadow you keep noticing in the same places. We'd cross paths a few times in quiet corners. Parking lots, hallways, conference side rooms, spaces the public never enters. The first time I met him, he didn't introduce himself. He only corrected something I said under my breath about the church's new building project. "You mean the third building?" he murmured. I looked at him. He didn't look up from his tablet. "The one they announced is the third," he said calmly. "The first two were never announced." I laughed like it was a joke. He didn't laugh back. Then he added, softly, like he couldn't stop himself, "Be careful what you repeat. The walls have ears here." That was Daniel. He never sounded dramatic. He sounded like a man who had seen enough to stop trusting normal life. So when I got his 1:13 a.m. message, "Don't look for me, look for the receipt," I didn't treat it like a riddle. I treated it like instructions from someone who had already accepted his fate. The pastor's name, on paper, was Apostle Gideon Adebayo. On street corners, people called him Daddy G. On TV, they called him His Grace. In private circles, businessmen called him a kingmaker. And in the kind of rooms where favors move like cash, some people didn't call him anything at all. They just stood when he entered. He was the type of man who could call a governor and get picked up on the first ring. The type of man who would pray for a judge and the judge would suddenly become softer. The type of man who could promise a contract or a church deal today and ruin him tomorrow. And yet, his public image was spotless. Because when money is smart, it doesn't commit crimes in the open. It commits them through paperwork, through charity fronts, through honorariums, through seed faith gifts, through silence that gets paid monthly. Daniel knew that. He knew exactly which accounts were clean enough to show auditors, and which accounts were designed to never meet daylight. So if Daniel was missing, the first thing I needed wasn't a rumor. It was proof, a receipt. That word kept bouncing in my head like a coin on concrete. Receipt. Not file. Not document. Not ledger. Receipt. Something small. Something ordinary. Something you'd ignore. Because the best evidence is never the dramatic evidence. The best evidence is the thing that looks harmless until you notice the numbers don't match the story. I went to the one place Daniel would have planted something where it could survive even if he didn't. The church, not the sanctuary, not the offices where everyone smiles and calls you blessed. The back, the administrative wing, the place where printers never stop and paper piles up like snow. I didn't walk in like a detective. I walked in like a believer. That's how you move around powerful systems. You were the costume they expect. The receptionist recognized me enough to not ask too many questions, but not enough to give me full access. Perfect. I greeted her warmly, asked about the pastor's latest program, smiled, mentioned prayer points, mentioned how Daniel was always helpful when it came to administrative support. Her face tightened just slightly, half a second. Then she corrected it with a smile. Daniel isn't around right now, she said. He's taking time off. Time off. That was the official lie. I nodded sympathetically. Health is important, I said. She exhaled, relieved that I wasn't about to press. Then I asked casually, who is handling supplier reimbursements now? Daniel used to sign off quickly. That question did something. Not panic, not anger, a tiny flare of annoyance. Like she was tired of people asking about areas she'd been instructed to keep quiet about. She leaned closer slightly and lowered her voice. We have a new person, she said. Who? I asked. She hesitated. Then, Brother Nathan. Nathan. I didn't recognize the name, but the way she said brother told me what I needed. He was church staff. Internal, loyal, and probably chosen because he didn't ask questions. I thanked her and walked deeper into the wing, past glass doors with frosted labels. Accounts, procurement, legal. Legal. That door always made my skin crawl, because churches don't like legal departments unless there's something to protect. I moved carefully, pretending I had permission. Then I saw it. A small notice pinned to a board near the photocopier. It was a simple memo, printed the way people print normal office nonsense. Effective immediately, all expense reimbursements must be approved by B. Nathan. No signature. No stamp. Just a policy change. Effective immediately, because when someone disappears, the first thing the machine does is reassign their power. I stood there staring at the memo like it might speak. Then my phone buzzed. One message. Unknown sender. You're early. My stomach dropped, because I hadn't told anyone I was here. I looked around slowly. People moved in the hallway, carrying folders, talking softly. Nobody looked at me, but that didn't mean nobody was watching. The message came again. Same sender, 2 words. Leave now. I swallowed hard. Daniel's line echoed in my head. Don't look for me. Look for the receipt. If I left now, I'd be safe. But safe didn't find Daniel. Safe didn't solve anything. So I did the stupid thing. I stayed. I walked into the procurement corridor and pretended I was looking for a restroom. I moved past an open office where I could hear a printer running nonstop. Inside, 2 staff members sat at desks. One older woman, one younger guy. The younger guy looked up and gave me the smile of someone trained to smile. Good afternoon, he said. Good afternoon, I replied, matching his tone. Please, Daniel used to help me process a vendor refund. Who can assist now? His smile held, but his eyes flicked toward the older woman for half a second, like he was checking whether he should answer. The older woman didn't look up. She kept typing. Then she said, without emotion, we don't discuss Daniel. The words hit the air like a slap. The younger guy's smile stiffened. I felt my throat tighten. I forced a small laugh, like I didn't understand the weight. Oh, sorry, I said quickly. I just heard he's off sick. The older woman finally looked up. Her eyes were tired. Not afraid. Tired. Like she'd watched this cycle before. She leaned forward slightly and lowered her voice. He's not sick, she said quietly. My heart jumped. The younger guy turned his head sharply, warning her without saying it. The older woman ignored him. He's missing, she said. Then, softer. And they're acting like he never existed. My chest tightened. I tried to speak, but she raised a finger. If you're looking for him, she whispered, you didn't hear it from me. I nodded slowly, mouth dry. Then she glanced toward the ceiling. A small black dome camera sat in the corner. Her eyes went back to mine, and she mouthed one word. Receipt. My stomach turned, because that meant Daniel had planted the same clue with more than one person, or the system had become sloppy. Either way, it meant the receipt wasn't metaphorical. It was real. I left the office corridor like my legs weren't mine. Walked calmly, smiled at people, nodded at greetings. Act normal. That's how you survive inside a place that's already decided what your story will be. When I got back to my car, I sat there for a long time staring at the steering wheel, breathing shallow. Then my phone buzzed again. Unknown sender. This time longer. You don't understand what you're doing. Daniel is not missing. Daniel is being managed. If you keep asking questions, you'll join him. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. Then I got another message immediately after from a different unknown sender. Just one line. Go to the old audit office. Daniel left it where the pastor never looks. My throat tightened. Old audit office. The words hit like a hidden door opening in my mind, because I knew exactly what that meant. Before the church moved into their new world-class headquarters, they had an older building. A smaller office block where they used to store old documents, old receipts, old vendor files. Things nobody cared about until they became dangerous. The pastor never went there now. Why would he? He liked new things. New stages. New lights. New cameras. Old paper didn't impress crowds. But old paper could bury kings. I started my engine. And as I pulled out of the parking lot, I noticed a car behind me. Black. Tinted. Not speeding. Not hiding. Just there. Following at the exact distance of someone who didn't want to be noticed, but didn't mind if you noticed. And that's when I understood what Daniel meant. If he disappears, don't look for him. Look for what he left behind. Because the moment you start looking for him, the machine starts looking at you. The old audit office sat behind the newer church headquarters like a forgotten relative that didn't invite to family photos anymore. Same street. Same fence line, but different energy. The new building had glass, lights, banners, smiling ushers, security men who looked like they belonged in suits. The old office had peeling paint, a gate that squeaked when it moved, and a signboard so faded you had to squint to read the ministry name. It was the kind of place you'd walk past and assume nothing important could exist there. And that's exactly why important things were still there. I drove slowly, keeping my face relaxed, checking my mirror every few seconds. The black-tinted car stayed behind me the whole way, steady like a shadow with patience. No horn, no aggressive moves, just presence. I turned into the old office driveway. The car behind me turned too. My stomach tightened. I didn't park immediately. I drove past the main entrance like I'd missed it, then turned around and came back slow. I wanted to confirm what my body already knew. The black car didn't leave. It waited at the far end of the driveway, partially hidden behind a wall, as if the driver didn't need to pretend. My heart thudded. I parked near the entrance anyway, because when someone is watching you, leaving looks like guilt. Staying looks like confidence. And confidence is the only disguise you can wear when you're scared. The old audit office door was half open. Not wide open. Not locked. Just half open. Like someone expected me. I stepped out and the air felt different immediately. Less music, less human noise, more quiet. I could hear the faint hum of a generator somewhere and the distant echo of worship music from a new building drifting over the fence. The contrast felt wrong, like the new church was singing while the old church had bodies. I approached the door. There was no security guard outside. No receptionist. No smiling God bless you. Just quiet. I pushed the door slightly. It creaked. Inside smelled like dust, old paper, and stale air that had been trapped too long. I stepped in slowly. The hallway was narrow, painted cream long ago, now yellow by time. A few framed photos of the pastor hung on the wall. Older versions of him, slimmer, less polished. Back when he still looked like a man trying to become powerful, not a man who already was. The floor tiles were cracked in places. The kind of place where secrets feel safe because nobody visits. I moved deeper. There were offices with faded labels, accounts, audit, procurement. One door at the end had a metal plate that read, Archive Room. My phone buzzed. Unknown sender. You have 6 minutes. My throat tightened. I didn't ask how they knew where I was. I didn't even have the strength to be surprised anymore. I just moved. I tried the archive room handle. Locked. Of course. I scanned the door frame and noticed the keyhole beneath the handle. Old style. Then I remembered the message. Daniel left it where the pastor never looks. A hidden place doesn't mean unprotected. It means protected differently. I looked around the corridor. A broken notice board hung on the wall. Under it, a small wooden cabinet, like the kind cleaners keep supplies in. It didn't match the church furniture. It looked like it had been there before the ministry even moved into the building. I crouched and pulled it open. Inside were cleaning liquids, old rags, and a small bunch of keys hanging on a hook. One key had a tag. Not archive. Not accounts. Just a single letter, K. My stomach dropped. I didn't like patterns repeating like that. But I grabbed the key anyway and moved quickly back to the archive door. The key slid in smoothly. It turned. Click. The lock gave. My chest tightened as I opened the door. The room was small but packed. Metal shelves stacked with files, cartons, dusty binders, old receipts tied in bundles with string. Paper everywhere. Paper is the safest weapon in any system, because it looks harmless until it destroys you. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me, not all the way, just enough to keep the hallway noise out. The air was thick. A single weak bulb hung from the ceiling, flickering slightly like it was tired of holding secrets. I scanned the shelves, eyes moving fast. Where would Daniel hide a receipt? Not in a file labeled Pastor Gideon Crimes. Not in a folder marked evidence. He'd hide it in plain sight. Inside something normal. Inside something boring. I checked the nearest shelf. Old supplier invoices. Audit summaries. Donation logs. Then I saw a box labeled Events, Special Programs 2021. Boring enough. But the label was too neat. Too new. Someone had written it recently, in a bold marker, which meant someone touched it recently. I pulled the box down. Dust puffed out. Inside were envelopes, printed budgets, vendor receipts, and stapled sheets. I dug through, flipping quickly. Catering. Lighting. Stage design. Sound rental. Then I saw it. A small thermal paper receipt, folded twice and clipped to a plain white A4 sheet. The A4 sheet had one line typed to the top. If found, read this first. My hand shook as I unfolded it. The typed line was short. Do not photocopy the receipt. Do not take pictures inside this room. Read it. Memorize it. Put it back. My throat went dry. That wasn't paranoia. That was survival. I looked at the receipt itself. It wasn't church branded. It wasn't a vendor invoice. It was from a pharmacy. A local pharmacy chain. Date: 3 months ago. Time: 11:46 p.m. Item list: painkillers, antiseptic, bandages. Then one item that made my stomach drop. Sedative, 2 vials. My breath caught. Church event expenses don't include sedatives. I read further down. Total amount wasn't suspicious. Not huge. Not flashy. But the payment method line froze my blood. Payment: cash, approved by Daniel's initials. Then beneath that, something that made my vision blur for a second. A second line, faint, like it had been printed by a dying machine. Delivery location: Magdalene Home, Backgate. Magdalene Home. My throat tightened. I knew that name. Not because it was famous, because it was whispered. Magdalene Home was one of the church's charity projects. A women's shelter. A rehabilitation home. A place they proudly mentioned when they needed to prove their goodness. They showed pictures, smiling girls, prayer circles, donations. But nobody ever went inside for real. And nobody ever spoke about what happened after the cameras left. The receipt was small, ordinary. But it didn't feel ordinary in my hand. It felt like a door key. The sedatives. The time. The back gate. That wasn't charity. That was logistics. My phone buzzed again. Unknown sender. 2 minutes. My heart hammered. I stuffed the receipt back into its folded shape, but my eyes caught something else on the A4 sheet behind it. Faint indentations, like someone had pressed a pen hard without ink. A hidden message. I tilted the paper under the weak bulb, and the words appeared as shadows on the page. A sentence carved into the paper by pressure. Magdalene Home is not a home. My stomach turned. Under that sentence, another line. Ask about the empty beds. My mouth went dry. Empty beds? A shelter has beds. Empty bed sounds like space. Space sounds like storage. Storage sounds like holding. My hands trembled. Then I heard a sound outside the archive room door. Soft. A footstep in the corridor. Then another. Slow. Not hurried. like someone who knew exactly where I was and didn't need a rush. My throat tightened. I froze, listening. The steps stopped right outside the door. Silence. Then a gentle knock. Top, top, top. Not aggressive. Not loud. Polite. Like a person in power pretending to be civilized. My phone buzzed again, and I didn't need to check it to know what it would say. But I checked anyway. 1 minute. The doorknob moved slightly. Not turning fully. Testing. I held my breath. The steps outside shifted. A voice came, low through the door. Hello, it said softly. It sounded like a staff member. Friendly. Normal. That's how traps speak when they want you to open the door willingly. I didn't answer. The voice continued. We're closing the building. You shouldn't be in there. My mind raced. If I stayed, they'd force the door. If I left, they'd watch where I went next. Either way, they'd know I'd found something. Unless I did exactly what Daniel's instructions said. Read it. Memorize it. Put it back. I forced my shaking hands to place the receipt and the A4 sheet back exactly as I found them. Same fold. Same clip. Same position in the box. Then I slid the box back into the shelf, aligning it so the dust line matched. My heart hammered. The knocking came again, slightly firmer. Top! Top! Open the door, the voice said softly, still friendly. I didn't. I moved to the back of the archive room, scanning desperately. There had to be another exit. A back door. A window. But there wasn't. Just shelves and cartons and the smell of paper. Then I noticed something small behind a stack of binders. A narrow maintenance hatch low on the wall. Half hidden. Metal. With a screw latch. It looked like it led into an air duct crawl space or a utility corridor. Not an exit you'd use unless you had no choice. My breath caught. Daniel must have known. Because Daniel didn't leave clues without leaving a way out. The doorknob turned harder. The lock rattled. Last warning, the voice said, still calm. I dropped to my knees and grabbed the hatch latch, twisting quickly. It resisted, then gave. The hatch creaked open just enough for me to squeeze through. Cold air hit my face. I slid in, pulling the hatch closed behind me as gently as I could. Darkness swallowed me. I crawled forward on my elbows, feeling metal edges scrape my sleeves. Behind me, I heard the archive door open. Light spilled briefly through the cracks of the hatch, then vanished. Voices entered the archive room. Not one, at least two. Quiet, professional. One voice spoke in a tone that made my stomach turn. Not friendly now. Flat. Check the box. The other voice answered. Which one? The first voice said the label out loud. Events, Special Programs, 2021. My blood ran cold. They knew exactly where the receipt was, and they were checking to see whether I'd taken it. My heart pounded so hard I felt dizzy. Inside the hatch, I held my breath. I listened to the sound of paper shifting, cartons moving, shelves squeaking. Then silence. A long pause. Then the flat voice spoke again, almost amused. He put it back. Another pause. Good. The voice continued softly. Now we know he found it. My mouth went dry. Because that meant the receipt was never meant to be stolen. It was meant to be noticed. A breadcrumb. A test. The voice outside added quieter. Let him go. We want to see where he runs. I crawled through the hatch until my elbows ached and my chest felt crushed by the narrow metal space. It wasn't built for a person. It was built for pipes and wires. For things that aren't supposed to breathe. The only reason it existed was maintenance, small repairs, hidden access, the kind of hidden paths that old buildings collect over time. Daniel had known. Because Daniel didn't just hide evidence. He had exits. Ahead of me, the crawl space dipped slightly and opened into a vertical shaft with a ladder bolted to the wall. I could feel cooler air coming from below, the scent of damp concrete and old drainage. I went down carefully, one rung at a time, trying not to make noise. When my shoes touched the floor, I realized I wasn't inside the main building anymore. I was beneath it. A narrow utility corridor ran under the offices like a spine. Pipes lined the ceiling. Water dripped somewhere in the distance, steady like a clock. There was a metal door at the far end with a simple push bar. No alarm. No lock. Just a plain emergency exit. Of course. Because the pastor never looked here. Nobody looked here. I moved to the door, pushed lightly, and it opened into the outside world behind the old office building. an alley-like space between the structure and a boundary wall. Rain slapped my face again. I stepped out and pulled the door gently shut. For a moment, I stood in the rain, listening. No footsteps behind me. No voices. Nothing but distant generator hum and far-off worship music floating over the fence like a lie. Then I heard the sound I feared most. A car engine. Not near. Just present. Somewhere beyond the wall. Idling. Waiting. I moved along the wall, staying close, walking low under the cover of darkness until I reached the corner where I could peek through a gap in the gate. The black car was still there, parked exactly where it could see the front entrance. Not hidden, not shy, just waiting for my next choice. They were letting me go, because they wanted me to lead them to the next place. And now the next place had a name burned into my mind. Magdalene Home, back gate. I went around the building toward my car, forcing myself to move normally, like I'd just come from a boring errand. When I reached my car door, I didn't look around too much. I didn't fumble. I got in, locked the doors, and sat for 2 seconds breathing shallow. Then I started the engine and drove out. In a mirror, the black car pulled out behind me almost immediately. Smooth. No hosetaschen. Like it was attached. I drove anyway, because Daniel didn't say look for the receipt so I could get scared and stop. He said it because the receipt was the first crack in the wall. And cracks are how you bring down something that thinks it's unbreakable. Magdalene Home sat on the edge of town, not too far, but far enough that you couldn't accidentally wander there. If you wanted to go there, you meant it. The church advertised it as a women's rehabilitation center, a safe place, a second chance, a miracle factory, the kind of charity that makes donors feel clean. But even as I drove, I remembered something that never sat right. Nobody ever posted photos from inside that place. Not real photos. Only staged shots. A prayer circle, a group picture in the courtyard, a donation handover. Nothing in the dormitories. Nothing in the medical wing. Nothing in the back. Nobody ever did a walkthrough. And now I understood why. Because a charity can be a shelter, but a charity can also be a cover. The rain eased slightly as I turned into a quieter road lined with high fences and low streetlights. Then the sign appeared. Magdalene Home. A neat signboard, freshly painted, smiling font like it was trying to be welcoming. Behind the signboard was a tall fence with barbed wire at the top. Barbed wire on a shelter. That alone made my stomach tighten. I drove past the front gate slowly. A security guard sat under a small canopy. He looked bored, which meant nothing unusual happened here in the open. I didn't stop at the front gate, because the receipt didn't say front gate. It said back gate. I drove on, following the boundary wall around the compound, my headlights sweeping across rough ground and wet grass. The black car followed at the same distance. No fear, no ruse, just patience. The back gate was smaller, more industrial. No welcoming sign, just a rusted metal gate with a keypad box mounted on a post. A camera above it. My stomach tightened. Charity shelters don't need keypad access at the back gate. Not unless there's something they don't want leaving, or something they don't want entering without permission. I stopped a little distance away, under a tree, and turned off my headlights. I sat in the dark watching the gate. The black car slowed behind me, then continued past, slowly, casually, like it didn't want to park too close and spook me. It drove further down, then stopped where it could still see the road. They were giving me space. That was the most terrifying kind of control. My phone buzzed. Unknown sender. You're close. A second message came immediately. Do not enter. My chest tightened. I stared at the gate. If I didn't enter, I'd never know what the receipt meant. If I did enter, I'd be walking into someone's controlled zone. But Daniel didn't ask me to fight. He asked me to notice. Look for the receipt. Ask about the empty beds. Empty beds meant dormitories. Dormitories meant head count. Head count meant proof. I needed one thing, just one, something I could take without taking the receipt. Something they couldn't dismiss as rumor. A photo? No. They told me not to take pictures inside the archive room, and I obeyed because it felt like a test. Here, I could take a picture, but pictures can be disputed. I needed something better. A name, a register, a list, a number. I waited, watching the back gate. A full minute passed. Then headlights approached from the main road. Avon. White. No branding. It turned toward the back gate. The keypad beeped, the gate swung inward, and the van drove in. Not fast, not sneaky, normal. Like this happened often. As the van entered, I saw something through the rain-streaked windshield. A logo on the passenger door. Not the church logo. A medical supply company. My throat tightened. The van disappeared inside. The gate closed. The camera above the keypad pivoted slightly. Scanning the road. My road. My car. I lowered my head instinctively, but it was too late. Because a moment later, my phone buzzed again. Stop hiding. My blood ran cold. Then, walk to the back gate. I stared at the screen. I didn't move. The next message arrived. We already saw you. Don't make it suspicious. My throat tightened. This wasn't a warning. This was instruction. Either from the same system that had been guiding me, or from someone inside who wanted to control how I approached. Either way, staying in the car was no longer safety. It was delay. I opened my door and stepped into the rain. Cold air hit me. The smell of wet earth and metal. I walked slowly toward the back gate, hands visible, posture calm. Walk like you belong. That rule always works in places built on control. The keypad box had a small intercom button. I pressed it. A soft crackle. A woman's voice answered, tired and cautious. Yes. I kept my voice calm. Good evening, I said. I'm looking for the facility manager. I need to verify something in the dormitory logs. Silence. Then who are you? I hesitated. If I lied too hard, she'd shut it down. If I told the truth, I'd be marked. So I used the one identity that always opens doors in church systems. I'm with the ministry audit team, I said. It felt wrong leaving my mouth. But the words landed. The gate camera shifted slightly again, focusing. The woman's voice softened, but not in a welcoming way. More like resigned compliance. Name, she asked. I swallowed. Then I said the first name that came to mind. Samuel. Silence. Then a click. The gate opened slightly, not fully. A crack. Enough for me to step into a small guard area before the inner compound. A man stood there in a rain jacket holding a flashlight. He didn't look like a normal security guard. His posture was too straight. His eyes too alert. He examined me quietly from head to toe like he was scanning for weapons or recording devices. Samuel, he repeated, like tasting it. I nodded. I need the dormitory occupancy logs, I said calmly. Just a quick verification. He stared at me. Then he smiled faintly. Not warm. Not friendly. A smile that said, we know what you're doing. Of course, he said, voice smooth. Come. He led me inside through a narrow path lit by small ground lights. The compound was quiet. Too quiet for a shelter housing dozens of people. No laughter. No voices. No movement. Just buildings and fences and wet paths. We passed a courtyard with benches. Empty. We passed a small clinic building. Lights on inside. And as we walked, I noticed something that tightened my chest. Cameras. More cameras than a charity needs. Corner cameras. Door cameras. Corridor cameras. A network. The man led me to a building marked admin. Inside smelled of disinfectant. He opened a door into a small office. There was a desk, a chair, a filing cabinet. And on the wall, a whiteboard with a weekly schedule. But the schedule wasn't normal. It didn't list therapy sessions. It didn't list counseling. It listed times like intake, 11:30 p.m., transfer, 2 a.m., delivery, 11:45 p.m., delivery. That word hit like a punch. The man saw my eyes flick there and smiled faintly again. You want occupancy logs? He said softly. Yes, I replied, forcing my face neutral. He opened the filing cabinet and pulled out a binder. Thick, he said on the desk and flipped it open. The first page was titled, Dormitory Register. Rows of names. A few numbers. Dates. I leaned in. The names were first names only. No surnames. Most had ages written beside them. But what froze my blood wasn't the missing surnames. It was the column of the far right. A column labeled Status. And under Status, most entries didn't say active. They didn't say discharged. They didn't say transferred. They said cleared. Over and over. Cleared. Like the person wasn't a person anymore. Like they were cargo that had been processed. I swallowed hard. I turned a few pages slowly, eyes scanning. And then I saw it. Empty beds. At the bottom of each page was a number. Beds available. And the number was always the same. Always high. Always too high. As if the dormitory was never full. But the register listed plenty of names. So why so many beds available? Because the beds weren't the real purpose. They were staging. They were temporary holding. My throat tightened. The man's voice stayed calm. What exactly are you verifying? He asked. I forced a small smile. Just consistency, I said. He nodded slowly. Then he leaned closer, lowering his voice. Daniel was here, he said softly. My blood turned cold. I looked up. His eyes held mine. He asked about empty beds too, the man continued. Do you know what happened to him after that? He asked. My mouth went dry. I didn't answer. The man smiled faintly. He got cleared, he said. The room tilted slightly. My stomach dropped. Cleared. Like the status column. Like a label. My hands tightened on the edge of the desk. Then, as if to seal it, the man reached over and flipped the binder to the last page. A fresh entry. Not filled like the others. Blank lines waiting. At the top of the page, today's date. And under it, one name already written in neat handwriting. Samuel. My throat tightened, because that wasn't my name. But now it was. In their system. In their register. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't take it out. The man's smile widened slightly. He stood up and walked to the door, casually turning the lock. Click. Then he faced me again. Welcome, he said softly, to Magdalene home. And now, he added, voice calm as death. You're going to explain why you came here. The click of the lock wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was the kind of sound your body understands instantly. Your freedom becoming conditional. The man leaned back against the door with the relaxed posture of someone who had done this before. The flashlight in his hand wasn't even pointed at me. He wasn't trying to intimidate me with light or shouting. He was intimidating me with calm. Because calm means control. Explain, he said again, softly. The binder stayed open on the desk, my fake name written in clean ink under today's date. Samuel. As if the lie I told to enter was now a tag that belonged to them. I kept my face neutral. Forced my breathing slow. Fear makes people talk too much. Powerful systems feed on that. They let you babble until you contradict yourself. Then they choose the part that helps them. So I spoke only in the smallest pieces. I'm verifying inconsistency, I said. He smiled faintly. Inconsistency, he repeated, like the word amused him. In what? I didn't look at the whiteboard again. I didn't look at the cameras. I didn't look at the status column that said cleared. I looked at him. In reimbursements, I said. His eyes narrowed slightly. Reimbursements, he echoed, still calm. I nodded. Daniel used assigned vendor refunds. He didn't. So I traced the paperwork to here. He watched me for a long second. Then he chuckled quietly. You traced paperwork to a shelter, he said. You people always think paper is power. Paper is power, I thought. That's why they hide behind it. But I didn't say it. Instead, I leaned forward slightly and tapped the register with one finger, casual like I belonged here more than he did. If this is legitimate, I said calmly, then it has approval trails. His smile tightened. Approval trails? He asked. Yes, I said, voice even. Log references. Signatures. Audit stamps. Ministry oversight. I kept my tone professional, annoying, bureaucratic. Because systems built on intimidation hate bureaucracy. Bureaucracy creates records. Records create trails. Trails create exposure. The man's calm shifted. Not panic. Irritation. Like I'd brought a rulebook to a knife fight. You're in the wrong place, he said softly. I shook my head once. No, I said. If I'm in the wrong place, you would have sent me away. He stared at me. I continued, slow and steady. You let me in, I said. You showed me the register. You wrote my name, I added, nodding at the page. That means you're not hiding, I said. You're documenting. His eyes narrowed further. Documentation meant someone higher wanted this traceable. Traceable only inside the system, not outside it. The man exhaled slowly. Then he stepped away from the door, moved back to the desk, and placed his flashlight down carefully like this was a meeting. You're smarter than Daniel, he said softly. My stomach tightened. He said Daniel's name like Daniel was still a file on his desk. Daniel talked too much, he continued. You're trying to talk like paper. He leaned forward slightly. But paper won't save you, he said. I didn't respond. He flipped the binder closed and slid it aside, then opened a drawer and pulled out another file. A thinner file. No label. Just plain brown paper with a string tie. He placed it on the desk and untied it slowly. Inside was a single page. A printed form. At the top, it had the church logo. That logo didn't belong in this building anymore. But here it was, clean and official. The form title read, Transfer Authorization. My throat tightened. The man tapped the page once. Since you like paperwork, he said softly, let's do paperwork. He turned the form toward me. The form had fields, name, age, intake date, transfer date, destination code, approval. And at the bottom were signatures. 2. One was a name I didn't recognize, facility supervisor. The other made my blood go cold. Apostle Gideon Adebayo. The pastor. The signature was scanned and printed, but the style was unmistakable. This was not some rogue operation. This was connected. Directly. The man watched my face carefully. Now you understand, he said. I forced myself not to react. Forced my eyes to stay calm. If it's authorized, I said, then it's legal. The man smiled, amused again. Legal, he repeated. Then he leaned closer. Legal is what we print, he said softly. My stomach tightened. I looked down at the destination code field. It wasn't a place name. It was 3 letters and a number. CWT-7. What is CWT-7? I asked. The man didn't answer immediately. He picked up his flashlight again and rolled it in his palm like a coin. Then he said quietly, not a place you visit twice. My chest tightened. I looked back at the form. There were multiple copies behind it. A stack, all filled, all signed, all with different names, different ages, different intake dates, different destination codes. But the status on the register always ended the same. Cleared. My throat went dry. You're trafficking people, I said, my voice lower than I wanted. The man smiled faintly. We don't use dramatic words here, he said. He tapped the transfer form. People come, he said. People go. He leaned in slightly. And nobody asks questions, he whispered, because the pastor prays. The words hit like poison. You're using the church, I said. He shook his head. No, he corrected softly. The church uses us. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Once. Twice. I didn't check it. The man's eyes flicked to my pocket and back. You know what Daniel did? He asked casually. My stomach tightened. He tried to count, the man said. He tried to reconcile the numbers. He noticed the empty beds, he continued. He noticed the late-night intake, he added. Then he smiled. He noticed the receipts, he said softly. I swallowed. And I asked, forcing my voice steady. The man's smile faded. He asked the wrong question, he said. I waited. The man leaned back and said it calmly, like a policy. He asked where the girls went, he said. My blood turned cold. Then he added. And he forgot the first rule. I stared. The man's voice lowered. Do not ask where the cleared people go, he whispered. The fluorescent light above us flickered once. And in that flicker, I noticed something else in the room that hadn't registered until now. A second door, not the one we came in through. A reinforced door on the side wall. Metal, with a keypad. And faintly, through the crack at the bottom, I could see light. Brighter than this office light. Clinical light. My throat tightened. What's in there? I asked before I could stop myself. The man smiled again. That, he said softly, is where your questions take you. He walked to the side door and placed his palm near the keypad without touching it. The keypad beeped by itself. Unlocked. The door clicked open slightly. He looked back at me. You wanted to verify, he said. Now verify. He stepped aside. An invitation. Or a sentence. I stood slowly, legs stiff. Every instinct told me not to walk through that door. But another instinct, stronger, told me that whatever Daniel saw was behind that door. And if I walked away now, Daniel would stay clear forever. I stepped toward the door. The man's voice followed me, calm. Just remember, he said softly, once you see it, you can't unsee it. I pushed the door open. The air that hit my face was cold and sterile. A corridor lit by harsh white lights. The smell of disinfectant. And the first thing I saw made my stomach turn. A row of metal beds. Not dormitory beds. Hospital beds. Empty. perfectly made, and each bed had a tag hanging from it. A tag with a name, and a destination code. CWT-7, CWT-7, CWT-7. Like it wasn't a place. Like it was a pipeline. My throat tightened. Then I saw the last bed tag. The newest one. The one with today's date. And on it, in neat black writing, was my fake name. Samuel. Status field blank. Waiting. Behind me, the door clicked shut. Locked again. The man's voice came through the door. Muffled, but clear enough. Now, he said softly, you're going to tell us. Who sent you? The corridor lights were too bright. They didn't flicker. They didn't soften. They didn't allow shadows. It felt like the kind of light people use when they don't want you hiding anything. Not fear, not doubt, not evidence. The metal beds sat in a neat row like they were waiting for bodies on schedule. Each bed had a clip tag, clean and deliberate, as if human beings were inventory that could be tracked with the same calm you track medicine. I stood there, breathing shallow, listening to the sounds beyond the corridor. A soft hum, air conditioning, a distant beep, footsteps that came and went. This wasn't a shelter. This was a facility, a pipeline. The door behind me stayed silent, locked. The man's voice had stopped. He didn't need to talk anymore. He'd moved me where talking wasn't useful. I walked slowly down the corridor, reading bed tags like I was reading tombstones. First names, ages, intake date, destination code, always CWT-7. No surname, no ID number, no next of kin. Just enough information to claim documentation, not enough to trace a person back to a family. At the end of the corridor was another door, glass this time, with a frosted strip across the middle. Printed on the strip, medical unit, authorized personnel only. My stomach tightened. I leaned closer to the glass. I could see movement inside. Shadows, white coats, a trolley rolling past. Then the door opened from inside, and a woman stepped out. A nurse. Her hair was tucked under a cap. Her face looked tired in the way you get tired when you stop pretending something is normal. She froze when she saw me. Not fear. Recognition. Like she hadn't expected me. But she wasn't surprised to see a stranger trapped here either. Her eyes flicked to the camera above the corridor corner, small black dome, then back to me. What are you doing here? She whispered. I stay here, swallowing. I'm supposed to verify, I said, keeping my voice low. She stared at me like she could smell lies. Verify what? She asked. I hesitated. Then I decided to say the one name that mattered more than my safety. Daniel, I whispered. The nurse's face changed. Not shock. Pain. A small tightening around her eyes like a memory she didn't want to carry. Don't say that name, she whispered quickly. My throat tightened. He's missing, I said. She glanced at the camera again and leaned closer. He's not missing, she whispered. He's processed. Processed. The same energy as cleared. My stomach turned. What is this place? I asked, barely moving my lips. The nurse swallowed hard. It's the clean part, she whispered. I frowned. She continued, voice trembling with controlled anger. They bring them here, she said. They sedate them. They stabilize them. She looked at the beds. They prepare them for transfer, she whispered. My throat tightened. Transfer to where? I asked. The nurse hesitated. Then she looked at my face like she was making a decision that could ruin her. She stepped closer and lowered her voice even more. CWT-7 isn't a location, she whispered. It's a category. My blood ran cold. What category? I asked. Her eyes stayed locked on mine. Cargo with test, she said. I felt my stomach drop. I didn't even want to ask the next question, but my mouth moved anyway. Test for what? I whispered. Her voice turned smaller. Compatibility, she said. The word hung in the air like poison. Compatibility for what? She didn't say it. She didn't need to, because I finally noticed what my mind had refused to look at. On the corridor wall near the beds was a poster. A medical poster, laminated. It looked like normal clinic education material at first, blood types, safety protocols. But at the bottom was a line in small print. Donor match, priority clients only. Donor. Priorité client. This wasn't a shelter. This wasn't trafficking in the way people imagine it. Chains and vans and screaming. This was a medical supply chain, a pipeline for human bodies. And the reason it was protected was the reason it was profitable. My hand shook. The nurse saw my reaction and nodded faintly like she'd been waiting for someone to finally see it. Most of them come from rehabilitation cases, she whispered. From shelters. From rescued situations. She swallowed. And some, she added softly, come from places the church calls deliverance. Deliverance. I felt sick. I remembered sermons about demons and cleansing and helping women start fresh. Fresh. Like empty beds. My voice came out rough. The pastor, he knows. The nurse's mouth tightened. He signs the transfer forms, she whispered. He doesn't ask what happens after. Then she corrected herself, bitter. No, she said quietly. That's not true. She looked me dead in the eyes. He asks, she said. He just asks in private. My chest tightened. Why? I whispered. The nurse's face hardened slightly. Because money, she said. Then she added the part that crushed whatever hope I had left. And protection. She glanced toward the glass door behind her. These aren't random clients, she whispered. They're powerful. She leaned in even closer. Some of them donate to the church, she said. Some of them attend the services. And some, she added, voice barely audible, are the reason the police never come here. My throat tightened. A loud click sounded behind us. The corridor door at the far end opened. Footsteps entered, 2 pairs. The nurse stiffened instantly. She stepped back from me, face snapping into professional emptiness. A man in a clean coat walked in with another staff member behind him, both moving like they belonged to a system, not a hospital. The man's eyes landed on me. He paused. Then he smiled faintly, the same kind of smile the security man had. Not warm. Controlled. Who is this? He asked the nurse. The nurse's voice went flat. Visitor, she said quickly. Audit. The man's eyes stayed on me. Audit, he repeated softly. He walked closer, stopping just far enough to feel polite. His ID badge swung slightly from his coat. I couldn't read his name clearly, but I could read the department. Clinical compliance. Compliance. Of course. The system always has a department name that makes evil sound responsible. He tilted his head. Your name? He asked. My stomach tightened. I didn't answer fast enough. The nurse's eyes flicked to me like a warning. The man smiled again, patient. Don't worry, he said softly. We already have you on the register. My blood ran cold. He gestured toward the beds. You're scheduled, he said. Then he pointed at the last bed tag, the one with my fake name. Samuel, he said calmly. Welcome. My throat tightened. The nurse's face stayed neutral, but her eyes looked like she was apologizing without words. The compliance man continued, gentle like a pastor. We don't hurt people here, he said. We help them, he said, as if that word could rewrite reality. Then he leaned slightly closer and lowered his voice. But if you keep asking questions, he whispered, you'll need sedation. A chill ran through me. He straightened and nodded to the staff member behind him. The staff member rolled a trolley forward. On it were supplies, gloves, syringes, antiseptic, and a small vial with a label that turned my stomach. Sedative. My heart hammered. The compliance man's calm voice filled the corridor. Now, he said, tell me, who sent you? And behind him, the nurse's eyes locked on mine one last time, urgent. She mouthed something quickly. A single phrase. 2 words. Back gate. Then she flicked her gaze toward the far end of the corridor, the direction I'd come from. A hidden path. An exit. Or a trap. The compliance man didn't notice her mouth, but the camera in the corner probably did. I swallowed hard, forcing my mind to move fast. If I spoke, I'd be managed. If I stayed silent, I'd be sedated. If I ran, I'd be hunted. But Daniel left one receipt, and the receipt led me here for a reason. Not to die, to see, to count, to prove. So I did the one thing rich systems hate the most. I reached into my pocket slowly. The compliance man's eyes sharpened. Easy, he said softly. I pulled out my phone and raised it. Not toward his face, not like a weapon. Toward the bed tags. Toward the donor poster. Toward the transfer codes. I hit record. The compliance man's smile vanished instantly. He lunged, and the nurse, without thinking, shoved the trolley sideways into his leg. He stumbled. A syringe clattered. The corridor exploded into movement. The nurse grabbed my arm and hissed, "Run!" And we ran. We sprinted down the corridor, my phone still recording, the emergency bright lights making everything look too clean to be evil. Behind us, the compliance man shouted short, sharp commands. Footsteps slammed against the floor. The nurse pulled me hard toward the direction she'd hinted, not the main door, not the glass medical unit entrance, but a narrow side passage I hadn't noticed earlier, painted the same color as the wall, so it blended in unless you were trained to see exits. She shoved a shoulder into the panel at the end. It wasn't a normal door. It was a service access. It popped open, and cold air hit us like a slap. We spilled into a cramped utility hallway lined with pipes and metal cabinets. "Keep moving," she hissed. I could hear the corridor behind us filling with noise, more staff, more radio chatter, the sound of the building waking up to contain a leak. The nurse moved fast like she'd done this in her head 100 times but never dared to do it in real life. She led me to a stairwell and pushed the door open. The stairwell smelled like damp concrete and bleach. No camera inside, at least not visible. We ran down 2 flights, then up one, twisting direction like she was trying to confuse anyone tracking our path. At the final landing, she stopped at another door with a simple push bar. "This goes outside," she said, breathless. I nodded, lungs burning. She grabbed my phone with trembling fingers and tapped the screen. "Keep it recording," she whispered. Then she shoved it back into my hand. And before she pushed the door open, she looked at me with an expression that was half fear, half fury. "You didn't hear this from me," she said. I swallowed. "What's your name?" I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. She hesitated. Then she gave me a name that sounded too ordinary to be safe. "Amaka," she whispered. Then she added quieter, "And if you live, don't come back for me." My throat tightened. "Why are you helping me?" I asked. She stared at me like the answer was obvious. "Because I watched them clear a girl who still called her mother in her sleep," she whispered. Her jaw tightened. "And because Daniel begged me to do one thing if anyone ever came asking questions." I froze. "What thing?" I asked. Amaka's eyes locked on mine. "Make sure you get to the back gate with proof," she whispered. "And tell you the name." My chest tightened. "What name?" I asked, voice rough. Amaka swallowed hard. Then she leaned close, so close I could smell disinfectant on her breath. "The pastor's real partner," she whispered. "The one he calls when he needs reality edited." She paused, and then she said the name like she was dropping a stone into deep water. "Justice Olanrawaju." My blood turned cold. Justice. A judge. Not a lawyer. Not a fixer. Not a thug. A judge. That meant the entire system was plugged in. Police reports. Court orders. Search warrants. Missing persons files. All of it could be delayed, dismissed, or buried with one signature. My mouth went dry. Amaka squeezed my wrist hard. "Run," she whispered. Then she pushed the door open. Rain hit us immediately, hard, cold, loud. We were outside on the backside of Magdalene home, near the smaller gate area, where the fence met a stretch of dark road. The back gate was 20 meters away, but the moment we stepped out, a floodlight snapped on from above. Blinding. White. Harsh. A camera rotated toward us like an eye-opening. Amaka cursed under her breath. "They saw," she hissed. Behind us, the stairwell door slammed open. Footsteps spilled out. Voices. Shouts. Commands. "Stop. Don't let them reach the gate." Amaka grabbed my arm and yanked me forward. We ran. Mud sucked at my shoes. Rain blurred my vision. My phone slipped, but I gripped it tighter, recording everything. The floodlight, the fence line, the gate, the shouts behind. We reached the back gate. Amaka slammed her palm on a small release box mounted beside it. It beeped. Nothing happened. She hit again. Beep. Still nothing. My heart hammered. "They locked it remotely," she breathed. Footsteps behind us closed fast. Amaka's eyes darted, searching. Then she grabbed my phone again and shoved it toward the gate camera. "Look," she hissed. I didn't understand. Then she slapped the screen of my phone, opening the recording preview, showing the bed tags, the donor poster, the transfer authorization form, the CWT-7 label. She held it up to the camera lens. "See it," she shouted at the camera. "See what you're protecting." For a second, the camera kept rotating, as if confused. Then the floodlight flickered. The gate's keypad box beeped again, this time longer. Click! The gate unlocked with a mechanical groan. My breath caught. Amaka yanked it open and shoved me through first. "Go," she screamed. I stumbled out onto the road outside the compound. The rain hit harder here, windier. Amaka tried to follow. A hand grabbed her from behind. She screamed once, short, and the sound cut off abruptly like someone had covered her mouth. I spun back. 2 men in dark raincoats had her. The compliance man stepped into view under the floodlight, face tight with controlled rage. He looked at me through the open gate. Our eyes met. Then he smiled. Not friendly. Final. "Run," he mouthed, almost amused. As if he wanted me to. As if the chase was the point. I backed away, hard in my throat, and then I heard it. An engine. Close. Fast. Headlights swinging toward me from the curve of the road. The black tinted car. It pulled up right beside me and stopped so sharply water sprayed from the tires. The window rolled down. Inside was a man in a suit, dry in the rain like he wasn't fully part of the weather. He looked at me calmly. "Get in," he said. My stomach dropped. This was the car that followed me. This was the shadow. This was the watcher. And now it was offering me a seat. I stepped back. The man's voice stayed calm. "You're bleeding proof," he said, nodding at my phone. "And proof is dangerous to carry alone." I didn't get in. My phone buzzed. Unknown message. "Do not trust the car." Another message immediately after from a different unknown. "Trust the car or you die here." My breath caught. The man in the car leaned slightly forward. "My name is Tund," he said softly. "I work for the only part of the system that still fears public scandal," he added. He glanced toward the compound gate, where men were dragging Amako away. "They will correct her," he said quietly, "unless you move fast." My throat tightened. "Who are you?" I demanded. Tund's eyes stayed steady. "A cleaner," he said. I stared. He continued, voice low. "I clean messes before they reach daylight," he said. "And tonight," he added, "your little video is about to become a mess big enough to kill people above my pay grade." I swallowed. "What do you want?" I asked. He nodded toward my phone. "The name she gave you," he said. "Say it." My chest tightened. I hesitated. He watched me like he already knew. "Justice Olanrawaju," I said. Tun's face didn't change, but his eyes sharpened slightly. "Good," he murmured. Then he said the line that made my blood go cold. "Daniel tried to use that name. And that's why Daniel is already cleared." My throat tightened. Tund opened the passenger door from inside with a click. "Get in," he said. "I can take you to the only place that still keeps records even judges can't erase." "What place?" I whispered. Tund looked at me like the answer should scare me. "The central payment switch," he said. "The one where donor money becomes clean money," he continued. "The one where charity becomes cover." He leaned closer. "And the one receipt Daniel told you to find," he added softly. "That receipt wasn't proof of sedatives. It was proof of who paid for the sedatives." I stared. Tund's voice dropped to a whisper. "Daniel hid a second receipt," he said. "The one with the account name." My stomach dropped. "Where?" I whispered. Tund's eyes stayed locked on mine. "In the pastor's own house," he said. "In the place he thinks is holy," he added. "Under the altar." The rain hammered. Amaka's muffled scream echoed briefly from inside the compound, then disappeared. My hand shook. The world had narrowed into one choice. Stay on the road and be caught. Or enter the black car and move deeper into the system. I looked at my phone. Still recording. Proof. I looked at the open passenger door. Then I got in. The door slammed shut and the world became quiet, sealed, tinted, controlled. Tund started the engine. As he drove away, I looked back through the rear windshield. The back gate was closing. Amaka was gone, and the floodlight stayed on, bright as a warning. Tund's voice was calm, almost gentle. "Don't worry," he said. "If you play this right, you won't just expose the pastor. You'll expose the judge. And when you expose a judge," he added softly, "you expose everyone he's been protecting." The car smelled like leather and air freshener. Too clean for what had just happened. Rain drummed on the roof. The tinted windows turned the outside world into a dim, blurry film. Ton drove like he already knew the road by muscle memory, hands steady, eyes forward, not once looking back at the gate we'd just left. My phone was still in my hand, recording paused only by my trembling fingers. The little red dot felt heavier than a weapon. Proof. And proof was the kind of thing that got people cleared. Ton didn't speak for a full minute. He let the silence do what silence always does, force you to fill it. I refused. I stared at my screen, replaying the last frames in my head. Amaka's eyes, the floodlight, hands dragging her away like she was a problem being moved off camera. Then Ton spoke calm and low. "Look at me," he said. I didn't. He sighed softly. "If you keep staring at that phone like it's salvation, you'll die with it in your hand." I finally turned my head slightly. His face was ordinary. That was the scariest part. Ordinary faces disappear easily. "What do you want?" I asked. Ton kept driving. "To keep this from becoming my problem," he said. I let out a bitter laugh. "It's already your problem." He didn't smile. "Not yet," he said. "Right now, it's still yours." My phone buzzed. Unknown sender. "You were in the black car. You failed the test." My stomach dropped. A second buzz immediately. "If you want to live, delete the video." I stared at the messages, my throat tight. Ton glanced at the reflection of the screen in the window. "They're trying to control your panic," he said quietly. "Don't let them." "I don't trust you," I whispered. Ton nodded once. "Good," he said. "Trust gets people cleared." He took a turn into a quieter road, then slowed and pulled into a small fuel station that looked half closed. One dim bulb. One attendant asleep in a chair. He didn't park at the pump. He parked behind the station, where the cameras didn't face directly. He turned off the engine. Silence. Only rain. He looked at me now, serious. "You want to expose them?" he said. "But you don't understand the first rule." I swallowed. "Which is?" Ton leaned forward slightly. "If your proof stays on your phone," he said, "it stays inside your death." My hands tightened around it. "What do I do?" I asked. Ton reached into his jacket slowly, not fast, not threatening, and pulled out a small device. A simple storage drive, like something you'd use for office files. He held it up. "This," he said, "is how you survive." I stared. "No," I said immediately. "That's how you steal my proof." Ton nodded like he expected it. "Fair," he said. Then he did something that made my chest tighten. He placed the drive on the dashboard where I could see it clearly. Then he took both hands off it and leaned back. "Do it yourself," he said. "Ow!" I demanded. Ton pointed to my phone. "Open your settings," he said calmly. "Share the video to a cloud link. Any cloud. Then copy the link into a draft email and save it." I hesitated. Ton's voice stayed steady. "They can seize your phone," he said. "They can break it. They can correct your narrative. But once a link exists," he added, "multiple systems hold it. Multiple logs." I swallowed. The words felt true because they were boring. Paperwork. Trails. Systems hate trails. I opened my phone. My fingers shook, but I followed his instructions. The video file, bed tags, donor match poster, transfer form. Exporting slowly, the progress bar crawling, as if time enjoyed cruelty. Ton watched the road through the windshield. Not me. Not the phone. Like he didn't want to be seen participating. The upload finished. A link appeared. I copied it and pasted it into an unsent email draft with no recipient. Just a subject line. Magdalene, CWT-7. Then I saved it. Ton nodded once. "Good," he said quietly. My phone buzzed again. Unknown sender. "We see the link." My blood turned cold. Another message. "We will correct you before morning." Ton exhaled. "Now you understand," he said. "It's not about whether they saw it. It's about whether anyone else can," he added. I stared at him. "Who else is going to see it?" Ton didn't answer immediately. He started the engine again. "We're not going to the police," he said. I tensed. "Why not?" He glanced at me. "Because the judge you said?" he replied. "He's the kind of person who can make a report disappear before the ink dries." My throat tightened. Ton pulled out of the station and drove, slower now like he was thinking. After 2 turns, he stopped under a streetlight. Not bright, not dark, just enough to be seen. He took out his own phone and typed something quickly. Then he turned to me. "I'm going to give you a number," he said. "When you call it, You will not mention the pastor's name. I stared. Then what do I say? I asked. Tun's eyes stayed calm. You say, he replied, CWT-7 is active at Magdalene. My stomach tightened. Who is it? I asked. Tun paused. Then he said quietly, a journalist. My chest tightened. You said you clean messes, I whispered. Tun nodded once. I do, he said. Sometimes cleaning means wiping it away, he continued. Sometimes cleaning means dragging it into light so nobody can pretend it's dirt, he added. My throat went dry. Why would you help me? I asked again. Tun looked forward through the windshield, voice low. Because there are wars inside their system, he said, and you just became a weapon in one of them. He handed me the number. I stared at it. Then I dialed. It rang once. Twice. A woman answered, voice sharp and awake. Hello. I swallowed. I was told to call. I said, keeping my voice low. CWT-7 is active at Magdalene. Silence. Then her voice changed. Harder, focused. Who are you? She asked. I hesitated. Tun's eyes flicked to me. Don't give your name. I'm nobody, I said. But I have proof. Where is the proof? She asked. I swallowed. Link, I said. In a draft email. Subject. Magdalene, CWT-7. The woman went quiet for a moment. Then she said, listen carefully. Her tone sharpened into instruction. You're going to leave your phone on, she said. You're going to put it somewhere safe. And you're going to get out of Legos tonight. My stomach tightened. I can't, I whispered. You can, she corrected. If you want to stay alive. I glanced at Tund. He was watching the road again like a man waiting for thunder. The journalist continued. They will come for you first, she said. They won't come with guns. They will come with paperwork, she said. They will destroy your identity. My chest tightened. Okay, I whispered. The woman's voice softened slightly. And one more thing, she said. The nurse. The one who helped you. My stomach dropped. What about her? I asked. The woman exhaled. She's already in danger, she said. They'll correct her fastest. My throat tightened. I closed my eyes. Amaka. Then the call ended. Tun drove again. Faster now. More urgent. The city blurred past. I couldn't stop thinking about Amaka. About Daniel. About the empty beds. Then my phone buzzed, this time not unknown. A news alert. A church page post. The pastor's verified ministry account. My stomach turned as I read it. Praise report. By God's grace, Magdalene Home expands tonight. More beds. More healing. More restoration. There was a photo attached. Smiling. A ribbon cutting. A new ward. A brand new signboard. Donor wing. The post was time-stamped minutes ago. He was controlling the narrative in real time. Turning crime into charity. Turning pipeline into prayer. My breath shook. Tun glanced at the screen and said softly, almost like a prayer that wasn't holy. See, tomorrow morning, he continued, people will share that post and call him a man of God. And if you speak, he said, they will call you bitter. They will call you mad. They will call you a liar. They will correct you. Rain blurred the windshield. Then my phone buzzed again, unknown sender. One last message. We are coming. And beneath it, a photo, taken from behind, of me, in the black car, at the fuel station, under the dim bulb. My blood turned to ice. Because it meant they weren't just watching Magdalene Home. They were watching everywhere. Tun's voice stayed calm, but tighter now. Your proof is out, he said. Now we keep you alive long enough for it to matter. He took a turn, and as the car moved into darker roads, he said the last line quietly, the kind of line that sits in your chest long after the video ends. Daniel didn't leave you a receipt, he said. He left you a clock.